Hey guys, in this video I'll be comparing 2018 Phil Heath and 2006 Ronnie Coleman to see who is in better shape on the day that they lost their Olympia titles. In 2006, Ronnie was going for his 9th title, which would break the Olympia record for the most wins, while in 2018 Phil was attempting to win his 8th, tying with Ronnie and Lee Haney. As it would turn out, neither were able to achieve a historic win, placing second in both cases. Now, before the video does start, a like and sub would really help out the channel, and a follow to my Instagram would be much appreciated. With that all being said though, let's get into this video. The first pose of this comparison reveals a common flaw that both had towards the end of their career, that being their wide, washed out, and unaesthetic midsections. Apart from that, both had huge and conditioned arms, massive quads, and tons of mass. Phil is clearly ahead in the conditioning department, possessing cleaner separation in the quads, more definition in the midsection, and has a harder quality to his physique. Ronnie looks to be more massive, but sacrifices conditioning and looks a bit soft. He also has a bit of asymmetry between his left and right triceps, which does throw off his balance. That being said, he does have a great wide frame, imposing limbs, and tremendous size. However, Phil's equally impressive limbs and superior conditioning may be enough to compensate for his gut and narrow stature. I'd probably go with Phil here in my opinion, since he does look more complete, whereas Ronnie's physique looks a bit melted and soft. The front lat spread is a pose which neither of them look amazing in, however, Phil looks particularly bad due to his narrow clavicles. His unaesthetic waist only adds to this unsightly pose, almost stealing the spotlight to a certain extent. Surprisingly, he fills out the pose better than Ronnie, appearing to have the better set of lats in the pose. He also has drier, more defined quads and better calves, although you can't see them in this picture. Still, looking at Ronnie's twice as wide frame, amazing arms and strided chest, and a tighter midsection really does make me sway in favor of him winning. His width, size, and silhouette all seem to compensate for his lackluster lower body, conditioning, and atrophied lats, to the point where I'd have him winning the pose. He looks more composed and flows well in the shot, or at least better equipped to hit the pose than Phil. The side chest was one of the best poses for these two, since at their peak they presented two of the best side chest poses ever. Speaking of their peaks, 2018 Phil was a really good version minus the gut, as you can see that he has virtually zero flaws. Even his midsection appears tight and somewhat controlled and defined, helping him create a top tier pose. In contrast, Ronnie's flaws are clearly evident, as although he has all the size in the world, his conditioning is nowhere near as good as it once was. He gets dominated in the side leg, and his entire upper body looks to be holding a layer of water. It is, really a shame, because this was a really great pose for him back in the day, and if this was a size game, I would go with Ronnie all day. However, Phil's dry, detailed, and full physique is nearly perfect in the pose, and I think that he beats Ronnie in nearly every area. The rear double is where these two absolutely destroyed their competition in their prime, and here you can see that there is clearly one person that is dominating in this pose. In this case, that would be Phil, who is absolutely demolishing Ronnie, presenting so much more detail, hardness, and graininess in almost every muscle. Like the last pose, Ronnie has so much more size in those legs, arms, and even in the back. However, his glutes and hamstrings look watery, and his back is a bit asymmetrical, not to mention those triceps from behind also. He does still appear to be larger and thicker in the back than Phil, however, Phil's conditioning is too much for Ronnie to win purely based on size. It's not like Ronnie is steamrolling Phil in terms of mass either, while Phil really does present equally as impressive delts, arms, and legs, with better separation and conditioning to go with that. I'd personally go with Phil here, since he does look more refined and polished, but if Ronnie was in similar conditioning, I'd probably be more inclined to give him the win. Although the last shot was somewhat competitive, the rear lat spread is a blowout win for Phil. Ronnie's back really atrophied and faded over the last 2 years of his career, lacking the same sting that it once had, specifically in the rear lat spread. While he would normally dominate Phil in width, match him in thickness, and present thinner skinned conditioning, here it is particularly clear that he isn't winning anything. His back is completely gone, apart from the traps, which are still massive, and his glutes and hamstrings and quads, while, massive as well, are soft compared to Phil's. Comparing the two in terms of conditioning reveals a night and day difference, since when you compare the backs, it really, is lights out game over for Phil. Phil takes the back poses with ease in my opinion, since Ronnie's lagging condition and atrophy really started to catch up with him in 2006. The side tricep is a pose which Phil should win with ease, however I do think that Ronnie puts up a very solid fight. His midsection is much tighter and more controlled than Phil's, his chest and delt look pretty amazing, and his side leg shows better separation than it did in the side chest. His only real weakness is his arm, which also happens to be the one with the atrophied tricep. Compared to Phil, his arm looks, thin and flat, especially in that tricep, but also in the forearm. Phil's tricep is so full-strided and genetically superior, his chest and delt are bubbly and round, and his side leg shows more detail and dryness than Ronnie's. But I will say that Ronnie's midsection really does, defeat Phil's here, which is what throws off the pose for Phil. In my opinion, I do think that Ronnie presents a more aesthetic package in the shot. However, on stage, a judge would definitely objectively give this one to Phil, no doubt. Phil is just too complete and doesn't possess the same amount of flaws that plague Ronnie. The ab and thigh is probably one of their worst poses regardless of the year. Both never had the best midsections of all time or amazing tapers. However, these two versions are particularly bad. Phil's abs are completely misshapen and his overall midsection anatomy is completely messed up, while Ronnie's midsection may be more symmetrical. However, it is so wide and blocky. Neither have good V-tapers caused by narrow clavicles for Phil and an ever-widening waist for Ronnie. However, both do have pretty great quads. Ronnie shows more separation than he did previously, while Phil's tan and lack of oil or, bad lighting, whatever, hides his drier, more cut legs. Honestly, although neither look good by any means, Ronnie's wider frame, more symmetrical abs, and massive and somewhat cut quads seem to be enough to win in my opinion. Alright, here's the last pose, the most muscular, and here both do look very reminiscent of their prime. Ronnie has some really impressive round delts, crazy vascularity, and insane size, while Phil is super round and bubbly, thick in the chest, and has just as impressive arms and delts. Both show amazing quads in terms of size, however, Phil obviously wins in condition. Ronnie's upper body does stand out to me more, especially with his wider frame, vascularity, and size, and I do think that he is out-freak factoring Phil. Phil does have more wow factor and pop to the muscle and looks more aesthetic. However, his larger shoulders and narrow clavicles overpower his chest, while Ronnie really flows nicely almost everywhere. The pose is extremely close though, and I do think that it really comes down to preference. I would personally go with Ronnie for his wider structure and sheer size. However, giving this to Phil would be just as reasonable. Alright guys, that about does it for this video. In summary, I had this one ending in a 5-3 win for Phil, with Phil convincingly winning most of his poses. I do think that he was definitely in superior conditioning to Ronnie in 2018. However, in my opinion, his midsection issues were worse than Ronnie's. If Ronnie had comparable conditioning to Phil, something like 05 or 01, then he may have fared better. However, as it is, his soft midsection and watery legs from almost every angle were what cost him the win in this comparison. Anyways, guys, do let me know down below what you thought of this comparison and whether or not you agreed with the video. With that being said, I do hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.